Thank you for inviting me to present at the GLC conference. My presentation is entitled Improving Communication and University Culture, Busting Silos, Tearing Down Walls, and Rebuilding Bridges. I'm Professor Philip Auter of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette in the United States. Why is my topic one that relates to listening? Because at universities, as in many organizations, you'll find that when there are organizational breakdowns, it's often because people that ran into problems stopped listening to one another and stopped communicating. University culture is filled with stereotypes. It is often perceived as a stuffy, calcified administration making policies in a vacuum, lost faculty senates struggling to make sense of things, staff drowning in paperwork and often dropping the ball, research and teaching faculty oblivious to everything around them, everyone overworked, underpaid, and counting their days to retirement. I found within the last year that this is not necessarily true. But let me go back a little further and start with my background in brief. It will explain to you how I ended up in higher ed. As a straight white male, I was born into privilege in the 1960s, although I did not realize that until many years later. I learned a lot about communication, and other cultures, beginning with my undergraduate experience at Georgia State University, my first 4 years in college. Also continuing on into graduate school at the University of Georgia and University of Kentucky. I met people of different backgrounds and different experiences, and I was able to start thinking more about how listening is important to understanding people who have different worldviews and life experiences from myself. Eventually I got married and raised children. During that period of my life, I worked at 4 universities. One of them I left on purpose. 2 of them I did not. I was let go. I am now at the University of Louisiana, Lafayette, where I've been for 20 years. During that time, also suffered several family losses. We lost 1 child, and back in 2016, I lost my first wife to cancer. I bring that up because differences in experiences are not just based on race and gender, socioeconomic status, but it's health experiences of people, different situations that occur over time. During that time, I also had many opportunities to travel. This stemmed from the research that I was doing, which was primarily involved with colleagues in the Middle East, and it gave me the opportunity not only to work with people via the internet, but to visit other parts of our very large world and experience firsthand other cultures. More recently, I've married again, and my family grew with 3 new stepchildren and a father-in-law who is differently abled. He's elder, but he is also speech and hearing impaired, so I've had to learn how to communicate in different ways with him as well. Why did I bring up the past? Because our history and our experience help us shape our worldview. This is where each one of us individually starts off, is with your background, your experience, what some people might negatively call your baggage. And from that starting point, which is different from my starting point or from anyone else's starting point, we can begin to see how we can better relate to others. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. That's a quote from Anas Nin, who I encourage you to look up. The point being, again, that we see everything from our perspective, and that is why multiple people viewing the same traffic accident at a corner, if they were to speak to the police about it, would probably provide different accounts of the event. So, let me tell you a little bit about becoming the president of the Faculty Senate at the University of Louisiana, Lafayette. I've been Senate president for a year now. It seems like 10, but it hasn't been. I've been teaching at UL for 20 years, plus 10 prior to that. I did have regular participation in the Senate, and I have been 10, now going on 11 years as our graduate program coordinator. I was quite comfortable in my teaching and in my research and my limited administrative experience as grad program coordinator, but I was looking for something new, a new challenge. I ran for Senate Vice President, was told by an administrator on the Senate that we needed 2 candidates for each office, and there was only one that was running for president. So they asked me if I would run for president instead of vice president. And I said, okay. And I surprised myself and everyone else when I won the Senate presidency. So now what do? I don't know. First, I had to try to determine what university culture was. I thought it was the good guys versus the bad guys, and the people at the top, of course, would be the faculty, and the people at the bottom would be the evil administrators and others who stand in the way of the faculty trying to get their things done. I was hoping for a grand vision, a team of people who were all clearly working toward one master goal, headed in the same direction, all paddling together. But what I ultimately found out was it was a bunch of people trying to be superheroes, not quite living up to that, doing their best on a day-to-day basis. Senate experience in this first year. We were supposed to begin in September of 2021. I was elected Senate President in April of 2021, but we had a surprise May meeting. I was told this after I was elected, not before. This was because one of the meetings was canceled due to COVID, and consequently I had to run a meeting just days after I was elected. There was way more committee work and activities than I anticipated. We did begin a salary equity adjustment procedure with an appeals process. We had to work with the administration on dealing with a registrar who quit and replacement of the registrar. Also, our director of the Office of Campus Diversity departed, and we had to work on finding an interim. The Senate began working on revising its constitution as well as the faculty handbook, and there were also university policy questions and concerns. Plus, it seems like so long ago, but there were many, many COVID-related issues. Honestly, there were too many items to list them all, but it was quite overwhelming. How do I handle this? I don't even know. I have friends and colleagues throughout the university, but I've never been involved in this kind of thing before, so it was very overwhelming not understanding how to do this. What we were able to achieve was ensuring and staying with online meetings. Because of that, we quadrupled the attendance to Senate meetings and tripled the involvement. We were able to get a Senate budget approved from the administration. We had between monthly meetings, we have regular monthly meetings of the Senate, but between meetings we had wrap sessions with administrative leaders, providing the university faculty and staff the opportunity to connect more directly with a lot of Senate university administration. We were able to complete a salary equity adjustment for faculty and are now beginning to explore market adjustments going forward. We nearly finished hiring the registrar. The new registrar has now since been hired, and we were able to hire an interim diversity director. And I say we, that was the administration, but the Senate was directly involved, and the administration was very cooperative with this. We also developed and charged ad hoc committees on salary, the status of women and underrepresented faculty, tenure and promotion, and the faculty handbook. Working with the provost, human resources, institutional effectiveness, and others on strategic planning, we were able to revise documents, begin rebuilding the faculty handbook from ground up. And on a lighter note, these were all positive things, but on a lighter note, we were able to establish a Faculty Staff Appreciation Day working with athletics. And on this day for each sport, the faculty and staff can attend the games for free. Ultimately, overall, what we did was we began to rebuild in improved campus communication. It had broken down a great deal. There was a lot of stress and difficulty, but a lot of people that were simply not listening to each other and simply not communicating. How did I go about this? It helped that I didn't know what I was doing. I tried a lot of things that if I had been inculcated into the culture of the time, I probably would have been told, you can't do that. People just don't do that. Almost without thinking, I fell back on two things that are really, for me, the same one. My education in human communication as a communications professor, and also using strategies to combat my natural introversion. So I pushed myself and represented the Senate at the same time and contacted people everywhere. What did work? Effective listening rather than passive hearing. This was critical. Paying attention to what administrators had to say, deans, department heads, faculty in various departments, staff members of the university. Focusing on future opportunities and shared goals, not just past mistakes and issues. Contacting everyone for one-on-one meetings. I made myself available for phone conversations, Zoom meetings, in-person meetings when that was allowed. Plus, I invited everyone to our Senate meetings. Things had become so siloed that the Faculty Senate was not inviting administrators and others to come to our meetings. And we changed that, and the world didn't end. Actually, what happened instead was people started communicating more effectively. Also assuming that everyone ultimately has positive motives, even if their methods are out of sync with that. That again goes back to listening. If I hear what I want to hear or hear what I believe, rather than listen carefully to what people who I'm challenged with working with are saying, then I can run into more difficulty. So through listening and conversation, compromise, collaboration, negotiation, professionalism, and politeness. Doing so, we tried to create collaborative, diverse work groups, let them work a lot of these things out rather than micromanage, invite the loudest voices into conversations, not shut them out. So if there was someone, and there was on a few occasions, who was very upset and railing about the way things were being done, and no one was listening to them, I invited them to be a part of the committee so that they could participate more clearly and directly in the conversation. And that did not derail the committees. It allowed things to move forward. Foster openness, transparency as much as possible. Try new things, be bold, ignoring my inner voice and the external surprise when things changed. I owned all mistakes and shared all successes. And where I could, I used my privilege and leveraged the university's success. And I had to be fine with my worst case scenario. If I was going to try something, I had to prepare myself for the rejection, the ultimate failure of the attempt. And once I became okay with that, I was comfortable trying it. And 9 times out of 10, it was a success. And the 1 time out of 10 when it was not worst case scenario. It just didn't quite work out. So we learned from that and moved forward. Some observations made in this process. Don't fear failure. Embrace it. There is no success without action. Even if you feel like you don't like change, it's important to be aware that change occurs whether you do anything or not. We are all walking up, down escalators. If we stand and do nothing, we go down. If we continue to work forward, we can make advances. Problems are actually opportunities. Framing them in a negative way is easy to do, but framing them in a positive way. The situation is here. It's something that we have to do something about. We can't magically make the situation go away. What can we gain from the situation? Since we have to address it anyway, what are the opportunities that we have? Offer solutions and not just complaints. Keep the job in perspective. It's a part of life, but it is not your life. It took a long time to get where we were. If your organization is in a negative place, if you have a communication group that is not listening to one another, understand that it took a long time to get there. It will take probably just as much time to get out. Everyone's big goals are typically the same. The smaller goals can work together. Compromise is the key in this situation. Universities, which are the example that I'm discussing today, are a community of people. Every organization is a community of people. There are not entities like the University of Louisiana or Global Listening Center, for that matter, is not an entity. It is an organization of people, all of whom are human beings with hearts and souls, feelings, emotions, goals, and desires. And when we remember that everyone we interact with is a human being like ourselves, not just a number, not a cog in the machine of an organization, then your perspective might shift. You may listen a little more carefully. You may consider a little bit more specifically before you make a response. Try to cross lines, all lines. Meet everyone, listen to everyone. It's about growing a community to work together for the common good. Remind everyone that you speak to that you are the you in your university, if you are working at a university. Now, I also want to show you an exercise that can be done. It's called Counting Higher Ed Issues. It's based on counting the squares, which is an exercise that we often use in human communication classes, and you can find that online. This version is based upon higher education, but they're all about the same. Pretend this is your university, and this little pink square is your department or area in your university. The other squares are all of the departments or areas in your university. Of course, this is not the scale. There would be many more departments than that. But what we have right now is a 4x4 square. Understand that there are multi-departmental issues, something that might affect a college. Now, getting back to the university, these are the other 3 universities in your system. Most universities are not standalone organizations. Our university is part of the University of Louisiana system, which is 9 universities. In my hypothetical example, we have 4. It's the state university system. Here's a system-level issue. It affects all 4 colleges, all 4 universities, but not each part of every university. There are state financial crises that affect every aspect of every university. We have weather events that could affect 2 of the 4 universities, a hurricane in our area, for instance. We do have regional and social issues that might affect different universities, and note, please, that these situations are overlapping. Then we have much more widespread situations, economic crisis, supply chain, global pandemic, war. All of these things are actually happening or have recently happened right now. And they affect everything, and all of this is layered. It becomes quite complex and continues to evolve. Now, with this set of squares, I would like you to envision doing the counting the higher ed issues. If you are watching this video by yourself, please do this by yourself. And later you're going to be asked to do it in groups, but imagine you're doing it with a group. If you are a group of 2 or more people, please do this exercise by yourself first, and then do it as a group of 2 or more, and see how your numbers come up. By yourself, first, count all the squares in this picture. How many do you see? It's a video, so you can pause it, so I won't leave it up there for a very long time. But as you go through the exercise, please pause the video so that you can not get ahead of the game and maybe kind of cheat the answers. Okay, made it black and white so it's a little easier to see. Count all the squares in the picture. How many do you see? Now, you should have taken a little while to do that. If you haven't taken a little while to count all of those squares, please pause the video and individually count them now. Once you're done counting them, if there is another person with you, count them again as a group of 2. Pair up with the person next to you and work together. I've done this exercise before in classes, and you start with the individual students, all 10 or 20 or 30 of them, doing this by themselves. Then we all talk about the answers. But then you partner people up in groups. They listen to each other, they communicate with one another, each person observes differently, and more of the truth might be revealed. So, if you've done your single count already, take some time now for a 2-person count of the squares that are visible. Remember, you need to count every single square that's possible in this video, in this image. At this moment, please pause the video so that you can do this. When you've completed the video, completed the count as 2 people, unpause the video and we'll go to a larger group. Now, let's tear down some walls and rebuild bridges. Join together in a group of 4 or 5 people. If there are only 3 in the room, then 3 people. But join in a larger group, larger than 2 people, and do one final count of the squares. What you'll probably find is that the individual counts, the 2-person counts, and the group of 3 counts will be different. You'll also probably find that the group of 3 or more people, the 4 to 5 ideally, will be the closest to accurate. Okay? Pause the video and do the count now, please. The correct answer for the grand total will be revealed shortly. If you have not finished counting the squares, you really need to pause the video now to make sure you've counted, because the next part of the video will be the answer to the number of squares in the grid. Okay, we're back now. I hope you have unpaused the video so that you can see the rest of this. We'll go through the image or grid one by one and show you all of the squares. Alright, this is the original image. This is, of course, square 1, the big outside square. Now we need to make combos of the larger sized inner squares. That didn't count, that was just an example. We're still at a count of 1. Here is one 3 large by 3 large internal square. So this is a square. That's also a square. They overlap, but they make different squares. There's another one, and there's another one. So we're now up to 5. Okay. Using those large squares, those were 3 by 3s, we also have 2 by 2s. There are 4 2L by 2L squares in this space. But here are 2 more, and 2 more, and one final one in the center. So now we're up to 14, and we haven't even counted the smaller squares yet. Oh yeah, we also have 16 1L by 1L squares. Okay. Now let's take a look at the combos of the medium-sized squares. We have inside the big square, we have large squares, these medium-sized squares, and eventually we'll get to those little bitty squares. Looking at those medium squares, Here's one that's 4 by 4. There's another one. These three coming up do not count because they're duplicates of the 2L by 2L squares. Okay, that didn't count. These do, though, because they're in a different location. Here's more. I said 3. That one's going to pop in so that you could see all of the purple one first. Here are another 3. Believe it or not, still 3 more. None of these 2m by 2m squares count because they are duplicates of some of the 1l by 1l squares. We're at 44 now, by the way. These don't count because they are duplicates of some of the 1l by 1l squares. They don't count as 2 medium by 2 medium. But these 5 do. And these 3, and these 3, and these 3. 2 more, 2 more. Now, here are also 32 1 by 1 medium-sized squares. There's 2 more, made up of some of the little squares, and 2 more, and 1 more. We're up to 97 squares now. Finally, we need to count the tiny, smallest squares. The 4s by 4s squared does not count because it is the same as one of the 1l by 1l squares. Here's one 3 small by 3 small. There's another. There's another. There's another. That's a little note because I actually did this presentation with paper handouts once, and I found more squares the night before the presentation, but I already had the printouts printed up. We're at 101, by the way. Here are 2 by 2 smalls. These don't count because that was a duplicate. Here are the 16 1L by 1L squares. So our total was actually 117 squares. If you got this right, you deserve another advanced degree. But seriously, the purpose of this exercise is because it exemplifies that things can often be more complex than they seem. There is always a new opportunity on the horizon, and it will impact current initiatives. We may never know the true number of squares or initiatives. Teams solve problems better. All cliches aside, crossing campus is not crossing enemy lines. It can bring a university community together, and it's not as hard as one might imagine. And in order to do this, we must listen effectively. Thank you.